Hey, Adam.
Hey, how's it going, Art?
Hi, Paul here. How you doing?
Oh, Paul. It's
Yeah,
Paul. You've changed names.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
well,
both of us. Both of us
we're
are
both
here.
here.
Yes, we're both hanging out. So, yeah.
So, any rumbles in the jungle? Any people yelling, screaming, going
Well, I
crazy?
don't know. So right now, Art, as we're broadcasting you on the ODwire live stream, and we have a chat window open as well. So this chat window, people have been giving us updates as to what's going on in the world. And so far, there have been no huge problems, thank goodness.
Yep.
Which is good. Which is a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So
so that part's good. I was talking a little bit about you. You really don't need an introduction, but the part that is unusual is the fact that after many years, when others are thinking about retiring, you decided to go into and open a practice cold with your spouse.
Yes,
And
that is true.
so
That is true.
so maybe we ought to concentrate because I'm sure people are interested about what your experiences were, how it's different than the good old days when we both had a practice in Roslyn when we
Yep.
first opened more than 30 years ago. It's more like 40 years ago now, I'll bet you. Oof.
Isn't that frightening? You all of a sudden you stop and you think, 40 years ago, and then you put it in the context of your parents, and you realize, oh my God, that's old. That is so old. and you go, I don't feel that old. So, I think the problem for me was dyslexia. I didn't understand the word retirement, and I still can't. And actually, Paul, I think you have the same problem. So,
Yep. Just keep
which I think is good. One of the great things is, I should say from the outset that, Paul, you have been a role model of mine for actually pretty much my entire professional career. And in fact, our practice in Roslyn was very much modeled after your very unique practice, very professional practice, very forward-thinking practice. And
Right.
I actually wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for you. So,
Oh.
I got to
Well,
say for the
role
record.
model. I don't know if your wife would appreciate that.
Let me tell you, you know me well enough to know that if she's my wife, she's very understanding and very forgiving.
Oh my.
So we were actually just talking about that. It's funny when you and I were young. We got out and we had literally nothing to work with. I mean, we had a greens pharopter. We had so buying a slit lamp was really a big decision.
And it was a green phoropter.
It was actually it was actually we had one. Years ago we decided to put together an antique room, and we decided that progress was actually a good thing. So we got rid of the antiques that didn't work too well. But we were talking about it. Well-equipped office. Your visual field was a tangent screen. And the only positive thing about that is that the cost of opening an office was really small. It would typically be one lane, and you could get away with it
Art,
relatively.
I hate to say it, because I don't want you the speaker. I don't want to top you, but when we went into practice,
Oh boy.
the first examination chair we had was a beauty parlor chair.
Paul, that's a beautiful. That's a beautiful thing.
There was no phoropter. There was a trial frame, the lenses from Columbia Optometry. But we did have a keratometer, and we did have a slit lamp. And the slit lamp was very forward-looking because most optometrists didn't have a slit lamp.
Right.
And
In fact, when we got out, we didn't. For the first few weeks, we didn't have a slit lamp until I, was overwhelmed by optometric guilt and the realization that I was working partially blind, and we went right out and bought a slit lamp, which probably cost about $3,000 in those days. It was probably
well, that was an industry too. It was always a Hog Strite slit lamp. We used to buy it new. The German mark always kept going up, so we sell it for more than we bought it, and then we pocketed the cash.
Yeah, actually, there was much more room for being clever back then.
Yeah.
Well, listen, in the old days, it was When we first went in, I think the upper level was at 90% tax. People bitch about the taxes today, but it's nothing. For a good portion of my practice, it was in the 70% category. So you did whatever you could do for creativity.
Yeah, but what's interesting is just not to dwell too much. We got out. We had no drugs. We had no no diagnostic drugs, let alone therapeutic drugs. And in fact, during my earliest years, it was during the beginnings of therapeutic, and for many states, diagnostic as well. And so the relationships between optometry and ophthalmology were very acrimonious. And people say, "Well, they're bad now." No, actually, they're great now. We have really good relationships, with ophthalmology. In fact, we get a lot of referrals from ophthalmology for medical things, for dry eye. We actually get referrals from cornea folks for managing dry eye patients. And think back 30 years, that never ever would have happened. So that's that. The other thing I think that's changed is the technology. Now that of course has been somewhat sobering when you open a practice today. And when I looked at how much we spent in opening this practice, I realized that I am now in more debt than I have ever been. In fact, I think in my entire life combined, I think I'm in more debt now than ever.
Another day older and deeper in debt, right?
Yeah. No, it's actually the practice is doing well, so we'll pay it off. And I'll tell you, the most gratifying thing of all is that the technology has so empowered us that we do things that I couldn't have even dreamed possible before. We're picking things up that we never would have picked up. Shannon, who's a major glaucoma guru, says we used to look at visual field changes. That's not even an issue. We look at very subtle optic nerve changes, and the OCT has been phenomenal, both from an anterior segment and a posterior segment, especially posterior segment. But I like it even for managing corneal ulcers, which may sound crazy. In the old days, we'd get an infiltrate, we'd freak out. And now we look at the depth of it and the size of it using anterior segment OCT. So and some of the equipment is great. I mean, I like playing with the equipment, as much as I like playing with nice cars.
Sure. So, but then there wasn't this. We were talking earlier today about managing practices and having websites built by pros. We didn't have those issues. You had to build a practice. VSP wasn't your partner in the early years. So you had to go out there and hustle to get patients.
You guys were great. I mean, you had a major referral network. I mean, you actually invented the concepts of getting out. I remember attending one of your lectures. I don't know if the listeners knew this, but Paul was a master hypnotist.
That was the first. Oh yeah. In order to get onto the lecture circuit, it's very hard to be unique. With lectures, and I said, geez, what the hell could we do? So we said we're going to learn, Ted Caslow and I decided we needed a night out. So we went to a professional hypnotist to learn how to do it. And then I got on the lecture circuit where I would talk about optometric hypnosis, and we would tell them what you would do for and how to do it and what hypnosis was about. And then the second hour I would take about 3 or 4 people in the audience that were very suggestible and put them under, and and one of the 4 always was amazing. So we're able to do some fun things like hallucinations and all stuff. Yeah, listen, that's show business,
Bark like a dog, bark like a chicken. And actually. The listener should know you actually used it for good purpose. Back in those days, hard lenses were hard.
Yep.
It was relatively new. People were terrified of them. and people really needed to be calmed down. And either you needed to have this amazingly calming personality, or actually, your forte was hypnotizing them into not being afraid. And I know you had successes where other would would fail. So that was a major.
But what happened was people always wanted something else from the hypnotist. I ended up starting with a neighbor came to me who was an executive at Procter and Gamble, and he said, I want to stop smoking. You got to help me. So I put him under, and I gave him the post-hypnotic suggestion. It's going to be, if you try to even light a cigarette, you're going to start coughing, and not only that, but anyone around you are going to be incredibly upset if anyone else is smoking. This was in the era of the Mad Men, when everyone was smoking. So he and he stopped smoking. I was able to do it, but he said, "My life is hell." I said, "What's the matter? My wife's a smoker." And now I'm yelling at him. But that wasn't the end of the story. So what happened was that he says, "Look, what happened was the president of Procter & Gamble found out my success. He wants our chief executives to also stop smoking, and I want to send them to you." So I said, "What the hell am I going to do now?" I said, "Look, well, I'm in the middle of, hypnosis takes an hour." I said, "I can't afford the hour." So I was charging incredible fees for this, like $500 for the first session, the first hour, and then post-hypnotic. A few of them came, but then I said, "Look, I can't keep doing this, because you can start making a living doing it, and it'll smack of quackery when patients see it." So.
That's funny. And actually, the funny thing, your neighbor didn't understand that every time it snowed, he had this compulsion to plow your driveway. So,
oh boy.
So apparently, post-hypnotic suggestion works well. It's funny when you're saying $500 an hour. Today, you say $500 an hour, and you'll get up. I was sitting on a panel with one of our really good practice management folks, and he was kind of yelling at the audience, you can see another patient. You don't need to see just 4 patients an hour. You can see 5 patients an hour. Of course, that's not my lot in life. We don't do that quite as efficiently as, or we don't practice as efficiently as he does. But back in the day, you'd actually spend time with patients, and it was quality time, because you'd actually look them in the eye. You'd chart on a piece of paper that you'd hold in your lap or on the desk, and now you basically spend most of your time facing a computer, typing in meaningless nonsense. So,
tell us how you really feel.
Well, that's the problem is it's now you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the entire world, and
right.
Some of the things you put in just are ridiculous. It's just you have to validate and click certain buttons. For me, who about 80% of my practice is dry eye now, maybe even more. And so meibomian gland dysfunction is my most common diagnosis. And when they went from ICD-9 to ICD-10, ICD-9 was a relatively simple single code for blepharitis, a little bit, dated, but still functional. Now each lid, each eye, so it's 4 codes. So yeah, I've adapted. I've figured out how to, forward the first diagnosis, change the code, update the code, so I can do it in about, maybe 2.5, 3 minutes. I can get all 4 in. But that's 2.5, 3 minutes where I could be doing something to help the patient, and it serves absolutely no purpose. And the ICD-10 codes, I don't know if anyone's bothered to look, but put in spacecraft, put in squirrel,
right.
And you find, encounter with squirrel, like what kind of encounter would you have with a squirrel that would be relevant to, crash of spacecraft? I mean, how many of us are going to, in our lifetimes, actually see someone who has been injured in a spacecraft crash or a spacecraft fire? So it's like, some of the stuff is just such nonsensical bureaucracy.
Yep. You might be interested if you're going to be running this whole program from start tomorrow, or it's going to be on. We had Eric Donenfeld on the first call yesterday. You remember Eric? When you were in New York?
Oh yeah. I've worked with Eric for years. Love the guy.
So he was one of our speakers, and he was nice enough to spend some time with us, and he made the point that he wants a pristine corneal surface before he will do surgery, and and so therefore, when you mention that you're starting to get referrals from ophthalmologists for dry eye, that's the reason. They don't want the complications to start with, so you can so you can have a good relationship with them once you get the reputation going. So
Eric's done some phenomenal work in that area, and in fact a lot of my interest in dry eye emanates from him. He has always been a phenomenal supporter of optometry, and actually I worked with a little mini satellite practice in their office for probably about a dozen years. And where I was, he invited me to attend cornea clinic at North Shore Hospital, and I went once and ended up never leaving. I was like the guest who would never leave. I ended up teaching residents for many years, and at this point he's still very cutting edge, and that concept of looking at the ocular surface and managing it before you begin to do any refractive surgery or cataract surgery makes tremendous sense. And in fact, he's just published a phenomenal study looking at omega-3s and how a decent triglyceride omega-3, I think it was PRN who sponsored it, literally.
Who sponsored us, and we just spoke to them yesterday.
Yeah, we've had the dry eye tour here this past couple of days. Yeah,
we've been dry eyes. Yeah.
It's a hot really is a hot topic.
Does it work?
Well, in fact, it's funny. Not only does it work, it's actually a pillar of my practice. I have an algorithm,
60-day,
which I discuss.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what?
And they're very doctor centric, so it's great. It's a profit center within the practice, which is great.
And they're offering 20% discount on their product if people go in.
That's right. Go into their booth.
So go into their booth today, and you'll get a bargain.
Well, what's funny, and you talk about practice. I think one consistent things that's always been true is you really need to find good people to work in your practice. That's certainly not changed, and we have just a phenomenal staff. And when we adopted PRN, it was actually funny because it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for it to really kick in, and we initiated it, and then we started, dispensing it to patients, and the staff came to me after about 6, 7 weeks, and they said, well, what's going on? I go, what are you talking about? Patients are calling up and they're, blessing you, and they're saying that they've never felt better, and they're doing great, and we started to see it very, very rapidly, and it's, and that's often the conduit of success when the staff tells you what the patients are saying. It could be also the conduit of failure when the staff tells you what the patients are saying when things aren't working. But that was
so it works.
Reinforcing to me. Oh yeah, in fact,
as a testimonial
this morning.
Listen.
Yes, seriously. Shannon said to me this morning. I was getting out of bed, sounding like my father.
Oh yeah.
She said, how's your shoulder feeling? I said, actually, it's pretty good. She says, since you've been taking the PRN, and I take the same 4 capsules. I don't do anything to patients that I would do to myself. And I had this rotator cuff thing, which was really interfering with even refraction. I know it sounds weird, but and a lot of pain, and I was taking glucosamine, wasn't really helping. And when I started the PRN, I'm not 100%, but I'm 90%, and consistently so. So it's actually
okay.
I was surprised. I trust nothing, and I'm really surprised.
Wow.
Typical New Yorker.
Yeah.
Typical New Yorker.
So we wanted to compare the practices now and to then. So basically, it costs a bundle to set up versus in the olden days. You had to. Were you able to build the practice without getting sucked into the vision care plans?
That was a primary goal. So when we first opened up, I said to Shannon, I don't even want to have a dispensary. We're not going to do it. We're just going to focus on medical eye care. And she said, you must have had a stroke. You're out of your mind. We'll never survive. And we talked back and forth. And she's a very, very bright young lady. So we did put in a relatively small dispensary. I know it's small because Jack Schaefer, yelled at me, said I should convert most of the office to the dispensary. And Jack is one of the most successful ODs in the country. So I actually did give that some thought, but it's not a big part of our practice. We do get we do take VSP, we take IMED. We just we throw out other plans when they don't make sense, and so you can't stay completely away from it. But I'm very careful to not get so sucked in I become dependent on it. I've seen colleagues in California who are 90% VSP, 95% VSP, and they panic when any change occurs.
Right.
And I think VSP works fine as long as it's not 95% of your practice. If it's 15-20% of your practice, it can be a helpful way to build the practice. You remember the old days, Paul, when you'd ask a patient, how did you find us, and they would tell you another doctor or a patient, and they would never look you up in a book or look you up on, because there was no online to look up.
Right.
But and you still can do that. We have a very strong web presence. I actually did it myself. I created our two websites, one for Phoenix Eye Care and the other one for the Dry Eye Center of Arizona. I did all of the web design and creation on my own, and that's something I kind of enjoyed. I was always very technically oriented, and I have a good marketing sense. I've done a lot of that kind of stuff, for industry. So I also had to apply it to our own practice, and so I think we get now a ton of patient referral. We get a fair amount of doctor referral, and from ODs, and so let me shout out to my colleagues in Arizona who refer to our practice. Bless you folks, because that's what we should be. Really, OD should be referring and supporting other ODs, and we're actually seeing that now, and it's extremely gratifying.
So I got a question for you though. Do you think that they refer to you because you don't really compete with them, right? You just said your optical's small, right? You have a niche that you filled, and they don't feel threatened.
Yeah, Arizona is also very different. I always felt, I love New York. I love growing up in New York, and I hate to say it, when I'm in New York, I feel at home instantly. But when you went to an optometric meeting, when you went to a society meeting, you always felt not. And I don't mean this in a harsh way or overarching way, but there was a sense that you were meeting with competitors. Paul and I shared an office with another OD.
Whatever happens to that guy? He had a Greek last name. I forgot his name.
Yeah, I think wherever he is, he's making.
He went crazy when you moved in next door.
Oh, that's crazy. Crazy is an understatement. Now, the listeners have to understand that this was a medical office building. It was an office building. It wasn't like there was signage out front. It wasn't like we opened up free eyeglasses or anything like that. There was no awareness that any of us were there from the outside. So a little tiny sliver of a sign, and to me, the more the merrier. It would be great. You can go upstairs to you or next door to him and say, hey. I need a B&L U3, a minus 350 U3. You got one? And I was a little past that. I guess it was the Aquaflex or maybe the Hydron days. But you think, and it's great. You need something, they'll give you something. But no, he actually slugged one of my techs at a male tech. Slugged. The most uncomfortable moment in my life is we shared a bathroom, and we ended up standing next to each other at the urinals. And let me tell you, it was the most icy thing. And actually, after we finished, I turned to him. I said, this is ridiculous, and he just harumphed at me and walked out without even washing his hands. Apparently, he was in such a hurry. But anyway, it was and in fact, when we joined the society, he got up. In fact, it had never been seen, at least in modern times, that someone objected to colleagues joining the optometric society. It was and we really did he did nothing. He was crazy. He was just a crazy guy.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a sense that there was a competition. Here, it's much more collegial. I mean, maybe there is competition, but you don't really see it. And so I think that's part of it. And the other part of it is I think people are really focused. To be honest with you, I don't think people really want that really complicated dry eye patient that's very difficult to manage.
Sure.
I think OD always want to do a good job for the patient.
I remember
and the patient does that.
I remember that I fought vehemently not to put eyeglasses into either practice while I was there, because I felt that we lose the referral sources from the opticians and optometrists that were fitting glasses. However, I was stupid, because as soon as I left,
you were right.
they were maybe, but by 1992, everyone was doing everything, so we were losing referrals anyway, and the glasses went in first into Roslyn, first maybe in Manhattan, and then into Roslyn. It became a tremendous cash cow, because it was only high-end stuff. So the two things that they incorporated after my leaving, because I insisted we shouldn't have, they put glasses in to make a lot of money, and then they put popcorn in the waiting room. So I went to visit. It smelled like a movie theater. I said, "What the hell are you guys doing?"
Like a movie theater. Well, you used to actually serve liquor. I mean, you used to serve wine and things like that.
Oh yeah, that was in the 70s and 80s, until people got healthy. We used to have afternoon time was red and white wine.
I was tempted to go upstairs, for an afternoon cocktail. But it's funny you should say that, because we also were a contact lens only practice. We were limited to contacts. We didn't have a dispensary at all. And back then, same exact thinking. I was very concerned that the optician, or two who referred to us, and the very few optometrists who referred to us would see that as competitive and not do it. But in reality, very quickly that became a non-issue, because frankly everyone was
doing everything.
Doing
Yep.
Yeah, and the only referrals we were getting were for ophthalmologists who didn't have dispensaries, so they didn't care either way.
Right.
In Roslyn, in New York, it was never very much. Wasn't a very profitable end of things. But we also didn't take any insurance. That's maybe the biggest change, which I didn't even. It's the elephant in the room. We didn't take any insurance at all, and except for Medicare. We took Medicare, but we flirted with it for a brief period of time. Realized that the patients who were paying, back then $110 or $120 for an examination, were coming in with insurance we didn't know that they had, and saying, "Oh, I see you're on my plan," and we were getting $18.72, where we were making 5 times that. So we very quickly withdrew from all the managed care plans, and here. I'd say probably 90% of our practice is insurance, at least, and of course, now, of course, you do need EHR, because you can't, send if you waited for paper bills to be paid. So, that living under the world of the insurers is a very different animal.
Absolutely. Oh, it was great taking a trip down memory lane.
No, actually, so the thing is, things are better and things are worse. What else is new?
Right.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Art, we got to get going. We've held you here for a half hour now. We actually we have to move on as the conference is unrolling. Have you given your talk yet? I don't even know. Have you?
No, I think it's a little later.
It's a little later, right?
Later.
So
okay. So everyone can go to visit the booths, but we have one more person that we're talking to.
Yeah, we got to talk to one more person before our break. So, Art, thanks so much for being here today. This was really fun.
Congratulations, guys. What you've done is just phenomenal. You really have done what people have struggled to do for a long time. What you're doing is really
for sure. It's Adam. It's not me. I'm just here for the show.
Well, there wouldn't be a show without him, so it is him. So
exactly, there'd be no show without you, Paul.
Yeah. All right, well, Art, thanks, and I guess we'll catch up on the road.
Sounds good. All right. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Bye.
Bye now.